My name is Margaret. I'm 66 years old, and I spent 38 years as a school librarian, saving a little from every paycheck, month after month, year after year, until I had something I never thought a librarian's salary could build: real, quiet security. 6 months ago, my son-in-law sat across from me at Thanksgiving dinner, put down his fork, and said, "Mom, we just think your money would work harder with us managing it." He said it so casually, like he was suggesting a new recipe for the mashed potatoes. He didn't know that 2 days earlier, I'd already called my bank and asked one very simple question. He didn't know what that phone call would set in motion. If you're new here, welcome. Settle in, because I'm about to tell you exactly how a man who married into my family tried to get his hands on 40 years of my savings, and exactly how I made sure he never got close. I need to tell you about the life before I tell you about the threat to it, because I think it matters that you understand what was actually at stake. I married young, 22, to a good, quiet man named Walter who taught high school science for 30 years. We never had much extra. 2 teachers' salaries in a small town don't leave room for much. But we had a rule, from the very first year of our marriage: pay yourself first. Every single paycheck, before anything else, a little went into savings. $10 some months when things were tight. More, later, when things eased up. It became a habit so old it stopped feeling like discipline and just felt like breathing. Walter passed 8 years ago, his heart, sudden, no warning at all, gone between one Tuesday and the next. I won't linger there. Some of you have lived that particular grief and you know there's nothing more I need to say about it. What I will tell you is that Walter left me something extraordinary, and it wasn't just love, though there was plenty of that too. He left me 40 years of disciplined saving, a paid-off house, and a retirement account that, through decades of quiet compounding, had grown into something substantial. Not extravagant. Not the kind of money that makes headlines. But enough that I could live comfortably, help my grandchildren with college one day if I chose to, and never once lie awake worrying about how I'd pay for anything for the rest of my life. I have one daughter, Sarah. She's smart, funny, works in marketing, and married a man named Derek about 5 years ago. Derek is charming, genuinely charming, the kind of charming that makes strangers like him within minutes. He sells something, I was never entirely sure what, over the years it changed more than once: real estate, then some kind of consulting, then something involving cryptocurrency I never fully understood and, frankly, never asked to understand. For the first few years of their marriage, Derek and I got along fine. Pleasant, easy, nothing more than that. I liked seeing my daughter happy. That was enough for me. It started changing about a year ago, right around the time, I'd learned much later, one of Derek's business ventures went badly wrong. It began with small comments. Innocent sounding, easy to dismiss individually. That's how these things always start, isn't it? Nothing you can point to and say, "There, that's the moment it turned." So Margaret, what's your retirement account actually invested in these days? Is it just sitting in some boring index fund? Derek asked me once, over coffee, in a tone that suggested genuine curiosity rather than anything else. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, I told him. Growing slowly and safely. Slowly, sure, he said, with a small laugh. But you could be doing so much better. I've got some contacts, some opportunities, that most people never get access to. I let it go. People say things like that at family dinners all the time. It doesn't mean anything by itself. But the comments kept coming. Over the following months, Derek brought up my finances with a frequency that started to feel less like curiosity and more like, I didn't have the right word for it yet, but I'd know it eventually. Strategy. Have you thought about what happens to all that money if the market crashes, Margaret? At your age, that's a real risk you're carrying alone. You know, Sarah and I have been talking, and we really think it would ease your mind to have some professional family help managing things, instead of doing it all yourself. It's a lot of responsibility for one person. Especially somebody who never really worked in finance. That last one stung more than I let on. I raised a daughter, buried a husband, and managed a household budget through 3 recessions on a librarian's salary. I understood exactly what I was doing with my own money. But Derek had a particular gift, I recognize it clearly now, for making competence sound like helplessness, if he said it gently enough, often enough, kindly enough. I started noticing something else, too. Sarah had gone quiet on the subject. My daughter, who used to talk to me about everything, had started deflecting whenever Derek brought up my finances at dinner. A small laugh, let's not talk about this right now, a subject change. I couldn't tell, at first, if she was uncomfortable with what Derek was doing, or complicit in it. That uncertainty was its own kind of heartbreak. Then, in September, Derek asked me directly to come to what he called a family financial planning dinner. He'd prepared a presentation, an actual slideshow, on his laptop, at my kitchen table, showing what he called a family wealth optimization strategy. The gist of it, once I got past all the language designed to make it sound sophisticated, was this: he wanted me to move a significant portion of my retirement savings into a joint investment account that he would manage, alongside Sarah, for the whole family's future security. It's not about control, Mom, Sarah said. She'd started calling me Mom more, I noticed, in these conversations, in a way that felt less natural and more strategic, though I hate that I even had that thought about my own daughter. It's about making sure the money actually works for everyone, long term. For Lily's college fund. For your own care, down the road, if you ever needed extra help. I already have a plan for my own care, I said quietly. I've had one since before either of you were involved in my finances at all. Derek smiled, that same easy, charming smile, and said the words that would end up sitting in my chest for weeks afterward. Mom, we just think your money would work harder with us managing it. I didn't say much else that night. I told them I needed time to think, which was true, though not in the way they probably assumed. I wasn't thinking about whether to say yes. I was thinking about why, exactly, my son-in-law suddenly needed access to a large sum of money that had absolutely nothing to do with him. I've never been the kind of woman who lets a bad feeling sit unexamined. Walter used to tease me about it. Margaret could out-research the CIA if she put her mind to it, he'd say. So the following week, I did some quiet digging of my own. Nothing dramatic. Just a few phone calls, a look at some public business filings, a conversation with an old friend from my library days whose son happened to work in commercial lending. What I found wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was worse, in a way, because it was so ordinary. Derek's cryptocurrency venture, the one I'd never asked too many questions about, had collapsed the previous winter, taking a significant amount of his and Sarah's savings with it. There were 2 outstanding business loans in his name, one of them significantly overdue. And 3 weeks before that Thanksgiving dinner, he had inquired, through a financial advisor friend of his, about the process for a family member to become a joint account holder or trustee on an elderly relative's retirement account. Elderly relative. That's the phrase the advisor used, apparently, in describing the general process to Derek. I am not elderly. I am 66 years old and I still walk 3 miles most mornings and can outlast my grandchildren at the park. But I understood, reading that phrase secondhand, exactly what category Derek had already quietly filed me into. Not a mother-in-law. Not a person. A category. A resource to be accessed, managed, optimized. I sat with that information for 2 full days before I did anything about it. I wanted to be certain I wasn't reacting out of hurt or paranoia. I went back over every conversation of the past year with fresh eyes, and once I saw the pattern clearly, I couldn't unsee it. The comments about my age. The gentle undermining of my competence. The slideshow. The repeated, increasingly specific suggestions about joint accounts, not advice, not guidance, access. On the 3rd day, I called my bank. I asked the woman at my bank, very plainly, what protections existed on my accounts against anyone, family included, attempting to gain joint access or trustee status without my full, informed, independently witnessed consent. She walked me through it all, patiently. And then she told me something I hadn't even thought to ask about, something that turned out to matter more than anything else in this whole story. Because of a wave of elder financial exploitation cases in our state in recent years, banks now had specific fraud prevention protocols for account holders over 60 who suddenly had a family member inquiring about joint access or account changes. If I wanted, she said, she could add a formal flag to my account, a required cooling-off period and a mandatory in-person verification, with a witness of my choosing, before any structural change could be made to my accounts, ever, by anyone, even with my own signature, unless I specifically requested to remove that flag myself, in person. Yes, I told her. Please. Add every protection you have. Then I did one more thing. I called Mr. Whitfield, a local attorney a friend of mine had used years before for her own estate planning, and asked him to help me formalize something I'd been considering loosely for a while but had never gotten around to finishing. A durable power of attorney, naming my daughter Sarah as the sole decision-maker in the event I was ever incapacitated, with an explicit, notarized clause excluding any spouse of hers, current or future, from any financial decision-making authority whatsoever, under any circumstances. Mr. Whitfield looked up from his notes when I dictated that part. That's a fairly pointed clause, he said carefully. It's a fairly pointed situation, I told him. I signed everything within the week. And then I waited to see what would happen next. Derek didn't let it go. I want to be honest with you, I almost hoped he would, that maybe I'd misjudged the whole thing, that maybe it really had just been an overzealous, badly worded suggestion and nothing more. But 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, he brought it up again, this time with more urgency behind it. Mom, I really think we need to move on the account restructuring soon, he said, at another family dinner, Sarah sitting quietly beside him. There's a really promising opportunity one don't want us to miss out on, and honestly, waiting isn't doing your money any favors just sitting there. What opportunity, exactly? I asked. He gave me a version of an answer that involved a lot of words: diversified portfolio, ground floor entry, family legacy building, and very little actual, specific information. I recognized the pattern by then. It was the same pattern from the slideshow, dressed up slightly differently. Derek, I said, and I want you to know my voice stayed even, steady, the way it had stayed steady in Mr. Whitfield's office weeks earlier. I know about the loans. The table went very quiet. Sarah's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Derek's easy smile faltered for the first time since I'd known him. I know about the cryptocurrency losses last winter, I continued. I know you inquired with a financial advisor about becoming a joint holder on an, and I'm quoting the term used, an elderly relative's retirement account. I am not confused about what's been happening here for the last several months, Derek. I have simply been giving you both the chance to be honest with me about it, and neither of you took that chance. Mom, Sarah started, but her voice broke on the word, and she didn't finish the sentence. I want you to know, I said, turning to my daughter, and this part was hardest to say, harder than anything I'd said to Derek, that I understand fear does strange things to people. I understand wanting to protect your husband, wanting to believe the best about him, wanting to fix a problem quietly before anyone else has to know it exists. I raised you to be loyal, and I don't regret that. But loyalty to your husband cannot mean silence toward your mother, Sarah. Not about something like this. Derek tried, briefly, to recover the conversation. Some line about how I was misunderstanding his intentions, how it was never about taking anything, how he was just trying to help the family. I let him finish. I didn't interrupt. And then I told them both, calmly, what I'd already done. My accounts are protected now, formally, through my bank, against any joint access or restructuring, by anyone, without an in-person process I control completely. And I've updated my power of attorney. Sarah, you remain my sole decision maker if I'm ever incapacitated. I trust you, and I always will. But that authority explicitly excludes Derek, by name, in writing, permanently, unless I personally choose to change that myself, with full capacity, in front of an attorney of my own choosing. That's insane, Derek said, his charm entirely gone now, something colder underneath it showing through for the first time. You're punishing me for trying to help this family financially, and you're making Sarah collateral damage in the process. No, I said. I'm protecting 40 years of my husband's and my hard work from a man who tried to access it through my daughter instead of asking me directly, honestly, even once. Sarah came to see me alone, 3 days after that dinner. She looked exhausted in a way I hadn't seen since Lily was a newborn and neither of them slept for months. I should have said something to you months ago, she told me, sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where all of this had unfolded. I knew what he was doing wasn't right. I told myself it was just Derek being Derek, ambitious, always looking for the next opportunity. I didn't want to believe it was about your money specifically. And then once I did believe it, I didn't know how to say it out loud without it feeling like I was choosing against my own husband. You weren't choosing against him by telling the truth, Sarah, I said. You were choosing for honesty. Those aren't the same as being against someone. She cried for a while. I let her. Then she told me something I hadn't known, that the financial pressure at home had gotten worse than she'd let on, that she and Derek had been arguing for months, that part of her relief at my confrontation was almost embarrassing to admit, because some deep, tired part of her had been waiting for someone else to say the thing she couldn't bring herself to say. I don't know exactly what happens next for Sarah and Derek. That's not really my story to tell you, and honestly, it isn't fully written yet, even for them. What I do know is that my daughter and I talk again the way we used to, openly, without the careful, deflecting caution that had crept into our conversations over the past year. She comes by on Thursdays now with Lily, just the two of them, and we bake, and we don't discuss money at all, because there's nothing left to discuss. That door is closed, and it's closed with a very good lock. I think about that Thanksgiving dinner often, Mom. We just think your money would work harder with us managing it, and I think about how close I came to letting politeness, and the fear of conflict with my own family, override 40 years of careful, hard-earned discipline. I want to say something plainly, to anyone watching this who's ever felt that same quiet pressure from someone in their own family. Needing to protect what you've built does not make you paranoid, and it does not make you unkind. It makes you responsible. Nobody, not a son-in-law, not even a child you love with your whole heart, is entitled to access to what you spent a lifetime building, simply because they've decided, on your behalf, that it would be easier for them if they had it. My accounts are still exactly where they've always been. Growing slowly. Safely. Exactly the way Walter and I planned them, all those years ago, $10 at a time. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to protect yourself from someone who was supposed to protect you, I hope you'll stay with me a little while longer. Tell me in the comments, has anyone in your own family ever made you feel like your money, or your judgment, wasn't really your own? I read every single one. Take care of yourselves this week. And take care of what you've built. You earned every bit of it. I'll see you in the next story.